My name is Ivy Tucker, and I am 31 years old. My older sister ruthlessly stole my identity and secretly chained $94,000 of dirty debt right to my clean name. When I uncovered the devastating truth and went to my parents for help, my mother looked me dead in the eye and coldly said, "She needed the money more than you did. Stop being so incredibly selfish." My father quietly added, "If you dare go to the police, we will tell them you gave her full permission." So I absolutely didn't go to the police. I went somewhere so much worse for them. Before I tell you exactly where that was, please take a brief moment to like this video and subscribe to the channel, but only if this heavy story genuinely resonates with your heart. And please, drop your current location and local time down in the comments. I always truly love knowing exactly where in the world you are listening from. Now let me take you back 16 months. Back to the exact night I signed a piece of paper I honestly thought was helping my mother. 16 months before my entire world crashed down in a tiny bank cubicle, my phone rang. It was 10 o'clock on a Wednesday night. I was standing in a freezing hospital room, still in my blue scrubs, halfway through charting vitals for an unconscious patient on a ventilator. The steady beep 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 of the heart monitor was the only sound keeping me awake. Then, Mom's name flashed on my glowing screen. My stomach did a familiar nervous flip. Why is she calling this late? "Ivy, the landlord's not renewing." Her voice cracked right in the middle of the sentence. It cracked in the exact places she wanted it to. "Your father's pension doesn't qualify us. And my credit. Well, you know my credit." I did know. Dad had retired after 34 long years of breaking his back doing pipe fitting. Mom had maxed out department store credit cards in her 50s and just never paid them off. Their combined score hovered somewhere sad and heavy, deeply south of 540. I rubbed my tired eyes. "What do you need, Mom?" "Just your name on the new lease. Same apartment, same rent. I wouldn't ask if there was another way, sweetie. Just my name." It sounded so simple, so harmless. Later I would find out there was never an eviction notice at all. The landlord hadn't said a single word to them. My older sister Delilah had literally typed up a fake warning letter on her shiny silver laptop. She created the perfect fake emergency. A desperate family crisis she knew I wouldn't walk away from. Because that was my role. I kept quiet, and I fixed things. I drove 3 exhausting hours the very next Sunday to help them. Delilah was already sitting at the kitchen table when I walked through the door. She wore heels, a silk blouse, and flawless makeup at 8 in the morning. She leaped up and hugged me like we were at a high school reunion. "I'll handle the copies," she chirped, smoothly sliding my driver's license and my crisp blue Social Security card right out of the folder I had brought. She disappeared down the dark hallway toward Mom's printer. I didn't blink. I didn't question it. I signed the lease at the dusty landlord's office that afternoon. Name, date of birth, Social Security number, employer, salary. I handed over every single piece of information a person would need to become me on paper. Delilah handed the blue folder back to me in the sunlit parking lot. "All set, sis." I remember her phone was in her other hand. The screen was still brightly lit. I didn't think about it. She was family. You don't audit your own family. You don't treat your sister like a suspect. But what I didn't see was that she was already setting up a ghost version of my life. She used my private details to buy a cheap burner phone. She set up a fake email address, ivytucker810@gmail.com, routing every single digital footprint safely away from me, while standing right to my face, smiling. On the quiet drive home, I checked my credit score the way I always did on the first of the month. The number popped up, 810. I smiled, the heavy exhaustion of my shifts melting away. I had earned every single point of it. 7 years of on-time payments, low credit card balances, 0 missed bills. I took a quick screenshot and saved it to a special album on my phone labeled House Fund. That digital picture is still on my phone today. It is the very last record of the safe, peaceful life I had before my own sister decided she deserved it more than I did. Let me tell you a little bit about Delilah. She is 3 years older than me and 4 inches taller. She is the kind of woman who walks into a crowded room and instantly rearranges the gravity. Every family gathering, every church potluck, every Thanksgiving dinner, Delilah arrived last and got noticed first. Mom introduced us the exact same way every single time. "This is my eldest, Delilah. She's in real estate." Pause. A glowing, proud smile. Then, almost like a disappointing afterthought, "And this is Ivy. She's a nurse." A nurse. She said it like I emptied bedpans for a living. Like keeping dying people breathing on machines at 4 in the morning was just a cute little hobby. As I drove back to my small apartment that Sunday, feeling deeply proud of my 810 credit score and my growing savings, I had absolutely no idea my own blood had just shoved me into a financial grave. Delilah played her golden child role flawlessly. She bought a flashy designer bag for Mom's birthday, acting like money was just paper. She took us to dinner at the fancy Italian place in the next town over, the kind of restaurant that uses real cloth napkins and dims the lights to make everything look expensive. She always picked up the heavy leather checkbook with a dramatic flourish. She would slide her shiny card across the polished table like a boss closing a massive deal. I never asked where those endless funds came from. I really should have asked, because here is the heavy truth that nobody else in the world knew. 3 years before that fateful lease signing, my phone buzzed at 1 in the morning. Delilah was on the other end, sobbing hysterically, her chest heaving. A young couple had filed a serious legal complaint against her. She had sold them a house and purposely failed to disclose a massive, dangerous crack in the foundation. The State Real Estate Commission immediately opened a strict investigation. 4 agonizing months later, her professional license was stripped away, completely suspended. She begged me, her voice totally shattered, not to tell a single soul. Mom would actually die from the shame. Ivy, please, you have to swear. Why do I always protect you? I thought back then. But I agreed. I carried that heavy, toxic secret for 3 entire years. I sat silently and watched her post old, recycled listing photos on Facebook, typing cheerful captions to make everyone believe nothing had changed. I sat through countless Sunday brunches, chewing my food quietly while Mom bragged loudly to anyone who would listen about her brilliant real estate daughter. I swallowed my anger. I swallowed the painful truth. Because that is exactly what I was trained to do in this family. I kept the engine running, and I kept my mouth tightly shut. I need you to deeply understand why keeping that secret matters so much. Because without understanding my silence, the rest of this nightmare is just meaningless numbers on a piece of paper. 7 years, that is exactly how long I had been scraping and saving for a down payment on my own home. Not a massive mansion. I am not delusional. I just wanted a simple 2-bedroom place with a slightly patched roof and a messy backyard that desperately needed mowing. It was listed at $175,000 in a quiet neighborhood where the streetlights actually worked at night. It was the kind of modest home where you could sit on the front porch with a warm cup of tea and hear absolutely nothing but chirping crickets. My own safe space. My escape. I had done the stressful math 100 times in my head. I needed exactly $31,000 for the down payment and the closing costs. I can tell you the precise number of exhausting night shifts that went into that exact amount. Every single Christmas I worked, wiping sweating brows and checking IVs so another nurse could stay home and open presents with their little kids. That was another $450 saved. Every single time I packed a sad, cold sandwich instead of buying hot soup from the bustling hospital cafeteria, I saved $12. Every canceled movie subscription, every politely declined happy hour with friends, every freezing February I walked through the snow without buying a warm new winter coat, all of those tiny sacrifices equaled $31,000. It sat safely in a high-yield savings account that I checked every Monday morning with the same devotion other people use to read their daily horoscopes. Just a little more, I would whisper to myself in the dark. I am almost free. I finally scheduled the big appointment with the bank loan officer for a bright Thursday morning. It was my only day off. His name was Clark. I carefully ironed my best professional blouse. I proudly printed out a thick stack of my pay stubs. I drove to the brick bank building 25 minutes early. I sat in my parked car, gripping the steering wheel, rehearsing absolutely nothing, because I truly didn't think there was a single thing to rehearse. My credit score was a flawless 810. My debt-to-income ratio was completely spotless. This was supposed to be the easiest, most joyful yes of my entire adult life. But there is one tiny, chilling detail I should mention before we go inside that bank. Exactly 1 week before that happy appointment, my phone buzzed with an out-of-state number. A polite woman on the line asked me to confirm the details of my recent personal loan application. I calmly told her she clearly had the wrong person and hung up the phone. I thought it was just another annoying scam call trying to steal my information. It wasn't a scam. It was the first quiet alarm of a raging fire that had already burned my future to the ground. Clark's bank cubicle smelled strongly of stale roast coffee and sharp carpet cleaner. It was a normal, boring smell, but to me it smelled like the finish line of a very long marathon. He had a sweet framed photo resting on his neat desk. 2 smiling kids, a goofy golden retriever, a perfect happy life. Soon I will have my own happy place, I thought, settling nervously into the guest chair. He warmly shook my hand, pulled up my digital file, and started typing away on his black keyboard. Click, clack, click. Then his fingers froze. He stopped typing entirely. He stared at the bright computer screen for a long time. Way too long. It was the exact kind of heavy, suffocating silence that actually changes the physical temperature in a room. My throat went completely dry. Miss Tucker, can I ask, have you recently opened any new credit accounts? He asked gently. No. My voice was a tiny, confused whisper. He slowly turned his heavy monitor toward me. I saw the cruel number before my brain could even process it. I stared at those 3 digits the exact way you would stare at a horrific car accident parked right in your own driveway. Your brain absolutely knows what it is seeing, but your body violently refuses to agree. That cannot be right, I stammered, my heart hammering painfully against my ribs. I was at 810 just last month. Clark scrolled further down the page. He began reading aloud, slowly, like a sad doctor delivering a fatal medical diagnosis. 5 different credit cards, 3 massive personal loans, all opened over the past 16 months at random banking institutions I had never even heard of, in distant cities I had never once visited. Total outstanding balance, $94,328. My freezing hands blindly found the hard edge of the chair. I gripped the plastic armrests until my knuckles ached. $94,000. Ma'am, did you open these accounts? Clark asked softly, his eyes filled with pity. No. Do you have any idea who might have done this? I didn't answer him. I couldn't. The horrific truth was already forming deep inside my tightening chest like a heavy iron fist. If I said her name out loud in that tiny cubicle, it would instantly become real. The apartment lease, the copied ID, Delilah's glowing phone screen shining in the dark parking lot while she smiled at me. She stole my life. Clark silently printed the terrifying report. He slid the warm papers across the desk. You need to file a police report today, Ivy. I drove home with that cursed printout resting on my passenger seat. I folded it over once so I couldn't see the crushing number. I didn't call the police. Instead, I called my mother. She picked up on the 3rd ring. I poured out everything: the bank visit, the ruined score, the fake accounts, the crushing $94,000. I forced my voice to stay completely flat and robotic, because if I let it shake even a little bit, I would lose the physical ability to speak at all. When I finally finished, the phone line went totally quiet. But it wasn't a confused quiet. It wasn't a shocked, horrified quiet. It was the calm, waiting quiet of someone watching a dark weather storm they already knew was coming. Your sister told me she had borrowed your credit, Mom said smoothly. She told me you knew about it. The solid floor beneath my feet violently tilted. I didn't know, Mom. She stole my identity. Do not use that ugly word, Mom snapped sharply. She is your sister. She forged my name, I cried out, hot tears finally burning my eyes. She needed the money more than you did, Ivy, Mom hissed defensively. You have a steady nursing job. You get a solid paycheck every 2 weeks. Delilah has been struggling so much lately. Stop being so incredibly selfish. $94,000 of secret debt was tightly strapped to my name like a drowning cinder block. And my own mother was calling me the selfish one. I hung up the phone. I collapsed and sat alone on my cold kitchen floor for 14 agonizing minutes. I know the exact time because I watched the green microwave clock slowly tick by. Then, with shaking fingers, I called Dad. He picked up on the 4th ring. His voice sounded thin, painfully careful, almost like he was reading directly from a script. Ivy, if you go to the police about this, I will tell them you gave Delilah your full permission. My breath caught in my throat. Dad, you know that is a lie. Your mother and I discussed this, he replied coldly. We need to keep this private. Inside the family, his hollow voice didn't even sound like his own. It sounded perfectly rehearsed and completely measured. It sounded exactly like someone had written those cruel words on a yellow notepad and held it up right in front of his face. Because someone had. I slowly set the phone down on the granite counter. I looked at the terrifying printout from the bank. Then I looked back at the silent phone. Suddenly I understood everything with a blinding, terrifying clarity that felt exactly like freezing ice water pouring straight down my spine. This wasn't just a messy family that made a stupid financial mistake. This was a family that had built a trap, and they were perfectly fine watching me bleed inside it. My mother moved fast, terrifyingly fast. Within 3 short weeks, she had made dozens of phone calls, not to check on me, of course. She called everyone else. Aunt Penelope, the sweet ladies from her Wednesday Bible study group, even neighbors she had known for 35 years. She spun them all the exact same delicate, poisonous story. Ivy has been under so much stress at the hospital, she would whisper sadly into the receiver. She is saying horrible things about Delilah that simply are not true. We are just so worried about her mental health. She is painting me crazy to protect her thief. The first stinging text message arrived from Aunt Penelope on a gloomy Friday afternoon. Honey, your mama is worried sick about you. Maybe you need to talk to a professional. Talk to someone? She meant a therapist. She really meant, your mother told me you are unraveling, and I believe her instead of you. But Mom did not stop at merely destroying my personal reputation with idle gossip. She went for the throat. The very next day, my phone buzzed violently in the hospital break room. It was Supervisor Hayes. Ivy, get into my office, right now. I hurried in, and she immediately shut the heavy plastic blinds. We received a highly disturbing anonymous tip, she stated, her tone like absolute ice. Someone claiming to be a concerned relative says you are drowning in a massive amount of secret debt. Worse, they accused you of diverting dangerous pain medications from our sick patients to pay for it. My knees completely gave out. I had to grab the cold metal back of a guest chair just to keep from hitting the floor. My own mother called my boss. She tried to frame me. She was entirely willing to strip away my hard-earned nursing license. She was ready to throw me in a jail cell, just to completely discredit my word before I could ever expose Delilah. I had to submit to a deeply humiliating urine drug test and a full locker search right then and there. I passed, obviously. I was perfectly clean. But the blind panic and raw humiliation burned a permanent hole straight through my chest. While I sat shaking in the break room afterward, Delilah proudly posted on Facebook. It was a bright, happy photo from 3 Christmases ago. The 4 of us gathered around a glowing tree. Mom in her fuzzy red sweater, Dad holding the turkey carving knife, Delilah and me standing shoulder to shoulder. The sickening caption read, "Family sticks together no matter what." It had 52 likes and 9 heart reactions. There was even a gushing comment from Mom, "My beautiful girls, always." I stared at the screen and felt something physically tighten behind my breastbone, pulling painfully closed like a harsh surgical stitch. In a tight-knit small town, your good reputation is your currency, and my mother had been happily spending mine. At the local grocery store, Laura from the church choir smiled way too hard and asked how I was really doing. At the corner gas station, Mr. Gibson, who had known my father for 4 decades, looked at me the exact way you look at a desperate person collecting dirty cans on the side of the road. It was deep pity mixed with extreme distance. I was rapidly becoming the broken family problem, the difficult child who made things up for attention. There was actually one single person in this twisted family who did not call me crazy. But I did not know that beautiful fact quite yet. Her name was Rose, and she had stood in my exact bleeding shoes 12 long years before me. Instead of breaking down, I kept thinking about that weird phone call. The one I had abruptly hung up on the week before my disastrous bank appointment. The polite woman with the out-of-state number asking me to confirm a personal loan. I frantically scrolled back through my long call history and found it. Area code 503, Oregon. I pressed dial before I could talk myself out of it. Federated Lending Group? How may I direct your call? Someone called me last week about a loan in my name. I managed to choke out. I did not apply for it. 25 agonizing minutes and 4 frustrating transfers later, a gentle fraud specialist named Diana confirmed my worst nightmare. A $14,000 personal loan had indeed been opened. The thief used my private social security number, my exact date of birth, and a weird mailing address I absolutely did not recognize. A remote P.O. box 45 minutes south. I requested my full, detailed credit report that very same night through a secure online portal. When the thick digital file finally loaded, I had to read it twice. My hands were shaking so hard I could barely control the computer mouse. 8 different accounts, all opened over 16 agonizing months. But they were not opened all at once. No, this was extremely careful. 1 new card every 3 to 4 months, constantly rotating between different wealthy lenders across multiple states. They used small enough dollar increments to easily avoid triggering automated banking fraud alerts. Whoever did this deeply understood the financial system. The fake mailing address on every single account was the exact same P.O. box. All important correspondence, monthly statements, and angry late notices. Everything had been secretly routed out there into the dark. It was entirely locked down through that cheap burner phone number she had bought the very day of the apartment lease. That is why I never saw a single piece of warning mail. Then my eyes locked onto the date attached to the very first account. It was a platinum credit card with a $9,500 limit. It was approved exactly 4 days after I signed that apartment lease for Mom. 4 days. She had not taken my sensitive information as a sudden, desperate afterthought. She had not clumsily stumbled into this crime because she was struggling. Delilah had confidently walked into my mother's sunny kitchen that Sunday morning, with a vicious blueprint already fully built. The fake rental lease was the lockpick. My trusted social security number was the open door, and Mom's desperate, crying phone call at 10 on a Wednesday night. I suddenly realized with a sickening wave of nausea that I didn't know if that performance was real anymore either. But if my mother and sister thought they had successfully buried me in their mountain of lies, they were about to discover I had finally learned how to dig. Mason noticed before I said a single word. We were restocking the ambulance bay at the bitter end of a grueling 13-hour shift. It was the devastating kind of night where you lose 3 critical patients and manage to save 1, and you feel absolutely nothing about any of it because the endless hospital paperwork won't let you process the grief. I was labeling plastic IV kits. My tired hands were moving on pure, numb autopilot. "You haven't said anything in 5 hours, he noted quietly. Mason Wells was a seasoned paramedic. He was built like a massive football linebacker but possessed the gentle soul of a quiet librarian. We had worked the exact same brutal rotation for 4 years. He knew my usual rhythms. He knew this heavy silence wasn't normal. "I'm fine," I lied. "You're not. And you don't have to tell me what it is," he said, handing me a fresh box of gauze. "But if you do, it stays right here." I am suffocating, I thought. I am drowning in my own name. So, I told him. I spilled all of it into the sterile garage air. The fake apartment lease. The hidden bank accounts. The staggering $94,000. Mom's chilling phone call. Dad's heavily rehearsed threat. The secret Oregon P.O. box. Mason leaned his broad shoulder against the white rig and just listened. He didn't interrupt. When I finally finished shaking, he didn't offer empty sympathy. He offered a vital lifeline. "My cousin's ex-wife went through something remarkably similar," Mason murmured. "Her brother-in-law opened secret cards in her name. She used a tough lawyer named Kelly Pratt. Does strict consumer protection stuff. Her office is over in Mapleton, 45 minutes from here." I called Kelly the very next morning. She answered her own office phone. It was a small, no-nonsense practice. 2 busy paralegals, no front receptionist. I gave her the short, painful version of my nightmare. "This is textbook familial identity theft," Kelly stated firmly. "Here is what we do, and here is what we absolutely do not do. We file an official FTC report immediately. We freeze your credit at all 3 major bureaus. We legally dispute every single fraudulent account." She paused, letting the silence hang. "And we do not yet, go to the local police." "Why not?" I asked, completely stunned. "Because your mother already has a polished counter-story fully prepared," Kelly explained sharply. "If you walk into a precinct right now, she will stroll right in behind you and smoothly tell the cops you authorized everything. We need a massive paper trail that speaks much louder than her lies." She is right. Mom is playing chess and I am the pawn. "Ivy, is there anyone in your extended family who might confirm what you are telling me?" Kelly asked softly. "Anyone who has seen your mother's destructive pattern before?" I hadn't spoken to Aunt Rose in almost 11 long years, but that rainy night, I picked up my phone with trembling fingers. The line rang 6 hollow times. I almost hung up on the 5th ring, terrified of the rejection. "Hello?" Her voice was deeper than I remembered, very cautious. It was the guarded way older people answer unknown numbers. "Aunt Rose, it's Ivy." There was a long, shaky breath on the other end, not a disappointed sigh. It sounded more like a heavy iron door finally opening after being stuck shut for a decade. "Ivy, oh my sweet girl. I wasn't sure I would ever hear from you again." I hadn't called her in 11 years, not because I didn't want to, but because the social cost was simply too high. After Mom aggressively cut Rose out of our lives, any casual mention of her forbidden name at the dinner table earned a silence so thick you could actually choke on it. Calling Rose meant choosing a side, and in our strict household, picking sides came with brutal consequences. I gave her the cold facts. No emotional editorializing, just the exact dates, the massive dollar amounts, And exactly what Mom said to me on the phone. Rose was dead quiet for a long, heavy minute. Then she exhaled. I am not surprised, honey. Not one little bit. She finally told me exactly what happened 12 years ago. Rose had accidentally discovered that Grace, my mother, had secretly borrowed money from the church's women's ministry fund. It was $950. Grace blamed the missing cash on a sloppy bookkeeping error. Rose bravely confronted her privately. Grace angrily denied it. Rose pushed harder for the truth. Within a single month, Grace had cheerfully told every living relative and close friend that Rose was bitterly jealous because she never had children of her own, and that Rose was actively trying to destroy our happy family. Edward chose Grace. Everyone chose Grace. Rose spent the next dozen years banished on the lonely outside. Your mother does not protect her actual family, Rose said, her voice trembling with ancient hurt. She aggressively protects the shiny story of the family, and absolutely anyone who threatens that perfect story gets completely erased. Then Rose told me a secret that made my stomach completely drop to the floor. She did it to your father too, you know. 17 years ago. She secretly opened a credit card in his name without telling him. He found out. How do you know? I whispered. Because Edward told me the awful truth the week before your mother made sure I disappeared. That was the exact, crushing moment I truly understood. Dad was never going to stand up for me. Not for me. Not for himself. Not for anyone. He was a broken coward who chose to be a silent accomplice. My father had surrendered to the monster, but as I looked at Kelly's legal checklist, I realized I was finally ready to hunt it down. The next 4 weeks of my life violently split into 2 exhausting parallel tracks. The first track was my normal reality. Grueling 13-hour hospital shifts, endless medical charting, frantic emergency codes, and the relentless beeping machinery of keeping total strangers alive. I was a ghost walking through the white halls, carrying a massive secret. The second track was my fierce lawyer Kelly Pratt's aggressive battle checklist. I worked that heavy list like a desperate second job. Tuesday morning, right after my very first strategy call with Kelly, I sat at my cheap kitchen table and officially filed the massive FTC identity theft report online. It took 45 agonizing minutes. Staring at the glowing screen, my shaking finger hovered over the final submit button. This is it, I thought. There is no going back now. I clicked it. The unique confirmation number was permanently saved in 3 secure places: my hidden email folder, a digital screenshot, and a freshly printed physical copy tucked safely inside a thick manila folder I locked in my car trunk. Wednesday was the ironclad credit freeze. Equifax, Experian, TransUnion, 3 separate, tense phone calls, 3 secure pins, 3 absolute confirmations. Nobody in the entire world could ever open a new financial account in my stolen name again. Not Delilah, not anyone. My digital ghost was finally locked in a cage. From Thursday straight through the following Monday, I aggressively typed out formal dispute letters, 1 separate, detailed letter for each of the 8 fraudulent bank accounts. Each letter was firmly stapled to a pristine copy of the official FTC report and my legally notarized affidavit. It was a sworn binding statement, signed directly before a stern notary public down at the crowded UPS store on Oak Street, boldly declaring under strict penalty of perjury that I absolutely did not open, authorize, or personally benefit from any of those stolen funds. Kelly immediately filed urgent legal requests with the wealthy creditors, demanding actual copies of the original loan applications. 4 of the 8 companies responded within 3 tense weeks. When Kelly finally showed me the returned paperwork, my blood ran totally cold. The messy signatures scrawled on those official applications were not mine. They were not even remotely close. My personal handwriting is extremely small and tightly controlled. It comes from years of fast medical charting and narrow paper margins, but the bold signatures destroying these legal forms were wildly looping, wide, and arrogantly confident. It was Delilah's unmistakable handwriting. I had stared at those exact same looping letters on cheerful birthday cards my entire life, but the specific chilling detail that made my tough lawyer go completely quiet was buried on the second application. It was a massive personal loan for $18,000. Right under the box labeled employer, someone had neatly written Tucker Realty. Tucker Realty, the exact same local brokerage where Delilah worked right before her real estate license was humiliatingly suspended. It was a professional company she could no longer legally represent, falsely listed as my proud employer. 4 blatantly forged signatures, Kelly said, her voice dropping to a serious whisper over the phone. And she illegally put you on the official payroll of a business she was completely barred from. That is not a simple family misunderstanding, Ivy. That is a major federal crime, but the nightmare was not over. And Ivy, Kelly added gently, her tone shifting into something much heavier and much darker. There is a secondary financial guarantor listed on one of these older rejected loan applications. Do you happen to know a Chloe Tucker? My breath violently hitched in my dry throat. Chloe, my sweet innocent little cousin. She was barely 23 years old, working double diner shifts just to scrape her way through community college. I drove straight to Chloe's cramped campus dorm that very same night. When I sat her down on her tiny bed and showed her the damning legal paperwork, Chloe didn't just deny it, she instantly broke down sobbing. She was violently shaking so hard she could barely pull air into her lungs. Delilah had ruthlessly taken out a secret $5,000 loan in Chloe's name 2 whole years ago. Aunt Grace found out about it. Chloe wept, her eyes wide with absolute terror. She cornered me. She coldly told me if I went to the local cops, she would falsely tell my strict parents I spent the missing money on hard drugs. She said she would get me completely kicked out of school. I have been secretly paying $150 every single month from my waitress tips just to keep her quiet. Seeing sweet Chloe's absolute paralyzing terror didn't just break my already fragile heart. It poured pure explosive gasoline on the raging fire burning in my tired veins. This wasn't just about my stolen little house fund anymore. It was a vital rescue mission. I am going to burn their perfect world to the ground. The sickeningly fancy invitation arrived in my mailbox on a quiet Sunday. It was tucked inside a thick cream-colored envelope decorated with elegant gold script. You are cordially invited to celebrate 45 years of love, Grace and Edward Tucker. Sterling's Restaurant, Sunday the 20th, 7 p.m., dinner, toasts, and dancing. Over 60 esteemed guests were invited. 4 entire generations of Tuckers, nosy neighbors, devoted church friends, our strict Pastor Thomas, the entire women's ministry circle, and even Martha Sterling herself, the wealthy owner of the restaurant and the powerful chair of every social committee that actually mattered in this small town. My phone buzzed happily barely an hour after I opened that toxic envelope. Delilah? I answered cautiously. You're coming, right? Mom really wants you there. Her sweet voice had that sickening, honey-coated warmth she specifically reserved for whenever she desperately needed something from me. Let's just put all this ugly mess behind us, Ivy. It is their special night. Let's put it behind us. Let's put it behind us. $94,000. 8 forged signatures, a ruined credit score, a terrified younger cousin being actively blackmailed. Let's put it behind us. I deeply understood exactly what she was truly asking. Show up, shut up, fake a big smile, pose for the happy picture, and give Mom her perfect, flawless family tableau right in front of the whole gullible town, because if I stayed home, I would instantly be labeled the bitter, ungrateful daughter, the living proof of everything Grace had been secretly whispering about my mental health. I'll be there, I lied smoothly. Really? Oh, that is so great. Mom will be so incredibly happy. I hung up the phone and immediately called Kelly. The big anniversary party is exactly 4 weeks away. I cannot legally advise you to make a public scene, Ivy, Kelly said carefully. But I can confidently tell you that every single legal document is perfectly in order. Your FTC report is firmly on file. Your disputes are highly active. Your sworn affidavit is notarized and freshly dated. Thank you, Kelly. Then I called Aunt Rose. I already know all about the big party, she said dryly before I could even finish my sentence. I am actually doing the table flowers. Your mother hired me because I am literally the only decent florist in this town, and she would rather swallow sharp glass than use the terrible one over in Mapleton. Rose let out a dry, humorless laugh. I will be there setting up everything from 5 o'clock onward. If you need me, Ivy, I am right there. I did not have a messy, screaming revenge plan. I had something so much simpler, and so much worse. I had the raw truth in their very own twisted words. Kelly had casually mentioned it almost in passing during our second strategy call. Just so you know, Ivy, our specific state has a one-party consent law for audio recordings. That simply means if you are an active part of a conversation, you can legally record it without ever telling the other person. My mother had built her entire kingdom on a foundation of flawless, beautiful lies. But she had absolutely no idea I was walking into her castle with a hidden microphone and a lit match. I quietly drove to my parents' neat little house on a gray Wednesday evening, exactly 3 weeks before the massive anniversary party. I calmly told Mom I wanted to talk one final time, absolutely face to face. No screaming phones on loudspeaker, no tired dad reading nervously from a prepared script. Grace slowly met me at the front door wearing her thick floral bathrobe. Edward was slouched low in his worn recliner in the living room, the glowing TV on, the loud volume turned all the way down. Delilah was nowhere to be seen. I deliberately sat down at the heavy oak kitchen table. My cold phone was tucked securely deep inside my jacket pocket, the digital voice memo already silently running. I kept my trembling hands pressed flat on the wooden table so my parents wouldn't see them violently shaking. "Mom, I am giving you one last, honest chance," I stated clearly. "Tell Delilah to immediately pay back every single dollar she took. Help me fix my ruined credit. If you do this, I promise I won't go to the local police." Grace defensively folded her arms across her chest. "You are honestly still on about this silly mess?" "She forged my legal signature on 8 different bank accounts, Mom." "She merely borrowed your good name," Grace snapped quickly. "Loyal families do that for each other." "She secretly took out $94,000, Mom." My voice echoed slightly against the bare kitchen walls. "Well, if she did that, it is simply because she was completely desperate," Grace shot back without missing a single beat. "You don't know what it is truly like to struggle in the real world. If she did, not she didn't, if she did, my mother had just coldly confessed that she knew every single dollar her golden child stole. She had known the horrible truth from the very beginning." I desperately looked at Dad across the room. He just blankly stared down at the beige carpet between his fuzzy slippers. He wouldn't even lift his sad eyes to meet mine. Grace leaned aggressively across the small table. Her sharp voice dropped into something incredibly cold, deeply precise, and terrifyingly calm. "Listen to me, Ivy. If you dare bring this up at our beautiful anniversary party, I will personally make sure every single person in this small town knows exactly what kind of ungrateful daughter you really are." I didn't argue. I didn't cry. I simply stood up. I picked up my heavy jacket from the wooden chair. I walked straight out the front door without saying another word to either of them. Once I was safely sitting inside my parked car with the cold engine completely off, I hit play on the digital recording. Every single sharp syllable was crystal clear. "She borrowed your name. If she did, I will personally bury you." Mom had just arrogantly handed me the final lit match. She didn't even realize the hidden microphone was already blazing hot. Okay, I need to pause this heavy story here for just a second because I know some of you listening are probably screaming at your screen right now. Just go straight to the police, Ivy. And I honestly get it, believe me, I really do. But here is the brutal, invisible reality people rarely tell you about familial identity theft. When your own trusted mother is completely willing to lie directly to the police for your thief of a sister, when the entire small town already firmly believes you are the unstable, crazy daughter because your mother spent 3 vicious weeks making toxic phone calls, walking into a bright police station absolutely does not feel like sweet justice. It feels exactly like walking blindly into another dangerous trap. My tough lawyer Kelly told me something deeply profound that I will never ever forget. She said, "The slow legal system will eventually handle the stolen debt, but the harsh court of public opinion is exactly where your mother lives. That is exactly where you desperately need the ugly truth to land." And Kelly was totally right. In a small, gossipy town, what people actively believe about your character on a Tuesday morning genuinely matters far more than what a tired detective eventually writes in a dry police report on a Wednesday. So here is my honest question for you. If your own flesh and blood had already turned the entire neighborhood violently against you, and you suddenly held a crystal clear audio recording of your own mother basically admitting she knew everything about the massive theft, what exactly would you do with it? Would you quietly play it for the local police? Would you play it for a bored judge? Or would you patiently wait for the exact explosive moment when it would painfully matter the most? Tell me in the loud comments below. I genuinely want to know exactly what you would aggressively do. Also, I definitely see you night shift listeners out there. Drop a thek emoji if you are hearing this heavy story at 3 a.m. I have worked enough brutal overnight shifts to know that is exactly when real stories hit entirely different. Alright, let me quickly get back to the burning story. Because the massive anniversary party was exactly 3 tense weeks away, and Delilah still had one more giant, humiliating lie she absolutely didn't know I could finally prove. I need to quickly take you back exactly 3 years, because what I am about to confidently tell you is the one terrifying thing Delilah was the most deeply afraid of. More than the stolen debt, more than the forged bank signatures, more than any of it combined, it was a cold Thursday night at 1 a.m. My glowing phone lit up the dark room. It was Delilah, crying so violently hard I could barely understand her frantic words. "They're actively suspending my real estate license, Ivy," she wailed into the phone. She hysterically explained that a sweet young family had happily bought an expensive house through her firm. 4 short months exactly after the closing, The devastated buyers found massive, terrifying cracks tearing through the foundation. It was incredibly dangerous structural damage that Delilah had fully known about and arrogantly hadn't legally disclosed to them. The furious buyers immediately filed a formal legal complaint directly with the State Real Estate Commission. The strict investigation took 120 agonizing days. The final crushing result: her professional license was entirely suspended, effective immediately. If Mom ever finds out about this, she will never ever look at me the exact same way again, Delilah begged, her voice totally shattered. You know exactly how fiercely proud she is. Please, Ivy, please don't tell anyone. And I didn't. For 3 long, painful years, I sat silently and watched my sister proudly walk into fancy family dinners wearing expensive blazers and loudly talking about the hot housing market. I watched her constantly post fake old listing photos on shiny Instagram with cheerful captions like, "Another happy buyer." I watched Mom physically beam with arrogant pride every single time a nosy neighbor politely asked about Delilah's booming, successful career. It was all a giant, pathetic performance. Every single fancy brunch, every shiny holiday, every casual, lying mention of a massive real estate closing was total, absolute fiction. Delilah hadn't actually earned a single, legal commission in over 3 entire years, but her new designer shoes still cost $250. Her shiny handbags still cost $450. The expensive restaurant dinners still happily went on her credit card, or as I shockingly now knew, straight onto mine. She had violently run out of her own available credit first, racking up $45,000 in personal hidden debt. Then she suddenly found a brand new trusting source: me, my clean name, my bright future, my perfect 810 score. I faithfully kept her ugly secret for 3 whole years, and she brutally used my stolen identity for 16 months in return. That is the exact twisted math of my sick family. And here is the absolute best thing about a state real estate license suspension. It is public, open record. Absolutely anyone in the entire world can legally search for it online. But nobody in my trusting family ever questioned beautiful Delilah. Nobody ever bothered to search. But somebody sitting at that fancy anniversary party definitely would. 4 days before the grand anniversary party, my phone cheerfully buzzed. Delilah was calling me again, sounding incredibly breezy and light, acting exactly like nothing in the entire world was wrong. "I am currently writing a beautiful speech for Mom and Dad," she chirped happily into the receiver. "It is all about deep family values, about unshakable loyalty, about how perfectly they raised us both to be deeply honest." She actually laughed. It was that easy, performative, fake laugh she used on wealthy clients. I might even cry up there on stage. Fair warning, you are funding your fake tears with my stolen future, I thought, my jaw clenching so hard my teeth ached. "Sounds really great, Delilah," I managed to say evenly. "Do you want to add anything to it? Like a joint sisterly thing?" "No," I replied softly. "It is your speech, your big moment." "Okay, good," she hummed. "Oh, by the way, I just found this absolutely gorgeous designer dress. It is a stunning navy blue. It costs $450, but hey, it is their 45th anniversary. You know you only get one of those." $450. I could instantly calculate exactly which specific stolen credit card that expensive charge was about to go on. I knew all the secret account numbers by heart now. But what my arrogant sister absolutely did not know was that my massive ironclad legal credit freeze had already fiercely kicked in. Barely an hour later, my phone frantically rang again. It was Delilah, calling directly from the busy register of the fancy boutique. She was in a full-blown, breathless panic. "Ivy, my card is declining," she hissed loudly. Her previous sweet tone completely vanished. "The stupid bank representative on the phone says the entire account is permanently frozen." I tightly gripped the cold edge of my kitchen counter. A massive, thrilling wave of pure adrenaline rushed straight through my tired veins. My trap is working, but if she somehow figured out I knew about the massive theft right now, she would absolutely never show up to the big party. I had to bite a physical hole in my bottom lip just to keep my voice steady. "Wow, that is so weird," I lied, feigning absolute innocent ignorance while my heart hammered a million miles an hour. "Maybe it is just a random security flag. Did you travel out of state recently? Just use another card for now." "Ugh, fine, I will just use Mom's," she snapped, sounding thoroughly annoyed that she was being inconvenienced, and abruptly hung up the phone. I exhaled a ragged breath I felt like I had been holding for an entire week. Right after that, the next warning call came directly from Mom. Her tone was incredibly short and sharply clipped. "Wear something very nice on Sunday, Ivy. And please, remember to smile. I absolutely do not want people asking any nosy questions." That dark night, after surviving another brutal 11-hour hospital shift, I sat alone at my tiny kitchen table. I opened my laptop and laid every single weapon out under the harsh overhead light. The official FTC identity theft report, freshly printed and neatly highlighted, the permanent credit freeze confirmations from all 3 major bureaus, my sworn notarized legal affidavit, clear paper copies of the 4 massive forged loan signatures placed side by side with my actual tiny handwriting from my official nursing license renewal, and finally, the typed transcript of the hidden audio recording. I did not sit there and furiously prepare a dramatic attack speech. I did not write a messy emotional exposé. Instead, I calmly opened a cardboard box of plain white envelopes. Inside each one, I carefully placed a single-page summary. It was perfectly typed, strictly factual, and contained 0 raw emotion. It was just a brutal timeline, the fake account numbers, and the FTC reference code. At the very bottom, I typed one single heavy sentence: "This critical information is also currently on file with a retained attorney." I licked the glue and sealed 5 envelopes. Not 60, just 5. I did not need the entire crowded room to read my painful truth. I just needed the absolute right 5 people to hold it in their hands. Who exactly were they? I will tell you soon, but not quite yet. I set the neat stack of white envelopes on my wooden nightstand, clicked off the warm bedside lamp, and blindly stared up at the dark ceiling until my alarm finally went off at 6. The agonizing night before the actual party, I sat on the hard linoleum floor of my quiet apartment. I was holding a bowl of cold cereal I wasn't even eating, just staring blankly at the faded photo taped to my refrigerator. The little house, 2 modest bedrooms, 1 tiny bath, a wooden front porch that sadly sagged on the left side, and a messy backyard where someone had lovingly planted a sweet dogwood tree 25 years ago and simply forgot to trim it. $175,000. I had proudly circled the listing price in bright blue pen the very day I found it online 5 hopeful months ago. That was back when my beautiful credit score still started with a proud 8. That perfect little house had officially sold to someone else exactly 3 weeks after Clark the bank officer turned me away. She didn't just steal money, she stole my sanctuary. I numbly dumped the soggy cereal into the metal sink and called Aunt Rose. "I will be there from 5 o'clock setting up the tall centerpieces," she promised gently. "You know, your mother demanded fresh hydrangeas in the dead of December." I strictly told her that would easily cost double the normal price. Rose let out a heavy, tired sigh. "Grace told me it is worth it for the pictures. For the photos, Ivy. That is exactly who she is. Everything is just a shiny picture." She paused, her voice dropping lower. "Rose, are you absolutely sure about doing this? If this blows up in your face, honey, your mother cruelly erased me 12 years ago for telling the simple truth about $950, Rose interrupted firmly. "What is she going to do now? Try to erase me twice?" I hung up and texted Mason. Just one single word: "Tomorrow." His solid reply came back in mere seconds. "You have got this, and you have the legal paperwork to prove it." I finally lay down in my cold bed at midnight. Sleep absolutely refused to come. My exhausted brain kept loudly replaying Mom's vicious voice in the dark. Not the cruel threat, but the other terrible thing she had said. Stop being so selfish. Like fiercely wanting my own hard-earned credit score back was disgusting greed. Like wanting a safe, quiet home of my own was toxic vanity. Then I thought about the number 512. The ugly red number shining on Clark's computer screen. The heavy, suffocating number Delilah had violently chained to my neck. I set my blaring alarm for 6 in the morning. In exactly 14 hours, I would either still have a fake, toxic family, or I would violently take my stolen life back. But as I stared into the pitch-black shadows of my bedroom, I finally realized the terrifying truth. I could not possibly survive with both. Sterling's gravel parking lot was completely packed when I pulled in at 6:45 p.m. The famous restaurant sat quietly at the very edge of town, white wooden walls, dark green shutters, and a wide front porch with rocking chairs that absolutely nobody ever used. For a small community, this was the ultimate venue. Fancy weddings, important retirements, massive milestone anniversaries. If a local event truly mattered, it happened right here. Before I could even reach down to turn off my car engine, my passenger door was violently yanked wide open. Delilah aggressively leaned inside. She smelled strongly of expensive floral perfume in pure suffocating panic. "What are you actually doing here?" she hissed, her furious eyes darting suspiciously toward the thick leather bag resting on my shoulder. The breezy, perfectly performative sister act was completely wiped away. "Mom said you were acting totally crazy all week. Listen to me. If you ruin this special night for them, I swear to God, Ivy, I will destroy you. I calmly looked at the beautiful woman who had already ruthlessly stolen my hard-earned money, my clean credit, and my absolute peace of mind. My racing pulse was beating so incredibly fast it almost deafened me, but surprisingly, I didn't feel a single ounce of fear anymore. You have nothing left to take from me, I thought. You already tried, I stated firmly, slamming my hand down on the central lock button so she was forcefully pushed back. I quickly rolled up the glass window, grabbed my heavy bag, and marched straight toward the glowing front entrance. I carefully counted the shiny dinner plates through the glass window as I walked up to the heavy door. 56. 3 long tables were neatly arranged in a giant U shape. A massive glittering banner stretched proudly across the back wall. Happy 45th anniversary, Grace and Edward, floating gold balloons, flickering candles, and Aunt Rose's stunning floral arrangements filled the space. Crisp white roses mixed with fresh eucalyptus. They looked incredibly elegant and deeply precise. Those delicate flowers were the only genuinely honest thing in that entire building. Stepping inside, the wall of joyful noise hit me instantly. Loud, booming laughter and the cheerful clinking of crystal glasses. Pastor Thomas stood near the wooden bar happily holding a cold ginger ale. Aunt Penelope wore a bright floral dress, leaning in and whispering to Uncle Jack. He was Dad's older brother, a broad-shouldered, serious man who still shook hands exactly like a binding legal contract. Over by the dessert spread, Martha Sterling herself, the wealthy owner and the fierce head of the Women's Ministry Board, was strictly directing a young waitress. And then there was Mom. She wore a stunning purple dress and shiny pearl earrings, gracefully moving through the dense crowd exactly like a slick politician working a room. A warm hug here, a loud laugh there, a gentle hand placed perfectly on every shoulder. Dad trailed silently behind her, just nodding and smiling. But it was a hollow, empty smile that stopped awkwardly at his jawline. He looked so tired, I realized sadly. A prisoner in his own life. Then I spotted Delilah. She was wearing the brand new navy dress, happily paid for by Mom, standing right near the tall microphone stand. She held a neatly folded piece of paper in her left hand. The big speech. She suddenly spotted me and waved bright and wide, acting exactly like I was a dear friend she hadn't seen in years. I wore a simple gray blouse, plain black slacks, and comfortable flat shoes. My heavy bag hung securely from my left shoulder. Hidden inside were 5 sealed envelopes and my charged phone. Mom quickly caught my eye from across the crowded room. Her perfect smile tightened dangerously at the sharp edges. She quickly marched over to me and leaned in close. "You came. Good. Sit down and behave," she ordered under her breath. I quietly sat down right next to Aunt Rose's station by the flower table. Rose gently adjusted a tall centerpiece and shot a quick glance at me. I gave her a tiny, almost invisible nod. Not quite yet. Delilah smartly waited until the sweet dessert was finally being served. It was classic, manipulative timing. Everyone was comfortably seated. Hot coffee was freshly poured. There was absolutely nowhere for anyone to go. She confidently picked up the black microphone from the metal stand, tapped it twice to get attention, and boldly flashed the dazzling smile that had been magically opening doors for her since she was 17. "Good evening, everyone," she cooed. The noisy room instantly settled down. Silver forks clinked onto ceramic plates. 56 eager faces turned completely toward her. 45 years, can you honestly believe it? She began smoothly. 45 beautiful years of deep love, endless sacrifice, and total honesty. She paused and looked directly at Mom. Right on cue, Mom delicately dabbed her dry eye with a cloth napkin. "Mom and Dad taught us that family absolutely comes first. Always, no matter what happens." Delilah continued, her voice swelling with fake emotion. "They taught us that true integrity is something you must actively practice every day, not just something you preach." A warm murmur of solid agreement rippled through the church ladies' table. Pastor Thomas nodded in deep approval. "They taught us that loyalty isn't just a simple word, it is an entire way of life. And I proudly carry that deep lesson with me every single day." Delilah dramatically turned her gaze to me. Her dark eyes softened into a practiced, deliberate look of pure affection. "And to my wonderful baby sister Ivy, thank you for always being there for me. I definitely don't say it enough, but I truly see you." Loud applause erupted. It was warm, generous, deafening clapping. Mom lovingly reached for Dad's rough hand. Dad silently let her take it. Aunt Penelope visibly mouthed the words, "So sweet." Martha Sterling proudly raised her crystal glass in a toast. I sat completely frozen in my wooden chair. 56 good people were joyfully clapping for the exact woman who violently stole my future and celebrating the cruel parents who actively helped her bury it in the dirt. Every single clap is another dollar you stole from me, I thought, my chest burning. Integrity. Honesty. Loyalty. She literally spoke those powerful words into a microphone, standing in a packed room full of people who implicitly trusted her, while wearing an expensive designer dress she bought using my stolen name. Delilah finally finished her sickening performance and gently set the microphone back on the tall metal stand. The loud clapping slowly faded into happy chatter. Aunt Rose caught my eye from directly across the wide room. She didn't speak a single word. She didn't have to. She just slightly tilted her chin upwards. "Whenever you are ready, sweetheart." I took one final shaking breath. I slowly pushed my heavy chair back and stood up, knowing that once I took this next step, my family would be shattered forever. Delilah gently set the heavy microphone back on the tall metal stand, soaking up the last warm drops of applause. Across the crowded room, Aunt Rose caught my eye. She didn't speak. She didn't have to. She just tilted her chin up ever so slightly. "Whenever you are ready, sweetheart." I slowly pushed my wooden chair back. It scraped loudly against the hardwood floor. I stood up, and I deliberately did not sit back down. I didn't rush. I walked straight toward the microphone the exact same way I walk into an intensive care patient's room at 4 in the morning, when the life-saving monitors start screaming. Steady hands, clear head, absolutely no wasted motion. A few seated people smiled warmly at me, naturally assuming I was just about to give a sweet toast of my own. A cute little addition from the shy younger daughter. But Mom's dark eyes tracked my movement like a sniper scope. Her jaw instantly set into hard stone. Delilah laughed. It was a light, highly nervous sound. "Ivy, what are you doing?" "I would like to say a few honest words about this family, if that is okay," I replied quietly. I reached out and firmly gripped the cold microphone. Delilah didn't physically move to stop me. She couldn't do it in front of the entire staring room. Public appearances mattered far too much to her. Mom's sharp voice came low and lightning quick from the decorated head table. "Ivy, sit down right now." I looked at my mother straight on, not with raging anger, not with crying tears. I looked at her with the deep, haunting calm that only comes when you have already lost everything that was ever supposed to scare you. "No, Mom," I said softly into the mic. "I think it is finally time everyone here heard from both of your daughters." The giant room went entirely still, not just quiet, still. The massive difference is that quiet can be comfortable and relaxing. Stillness never ever is. The heavy air suddenly felt thick enough to cut with a carving knife. I calmly opened my leather bag and placed the 5 crisp white envelopes directly onto the table beside the microphone stand. I didn't open them. Not quite yet. Dad suddenly stood up from his special chair. His white cloth napkin slid uselessly off his lap and onto the floor. "Ivy, please," he begged, his voice trembling. "Not here." I turned slowly to face him. My father. The strong man who patiently taught me how to ride a pink bicycle, but never once taught me that I actually mattered to him. "Dad," my voice echoed slightly through the speakers, "you had 16 long months to say not here. You cowardly chose every single one of those months to say absolutely nothing." He heavily sat back down. He collapsed the exact way an exhausted man sits when the very last vital rope holding him up has been brutally cut. 56 pairs of wide eyes watched us. Nobody chewed their expensive dessert. Nobody drank their hot coffee. Nobody even dared to breathe too loudly. I pulled the microphone closer to my mouth. "I am not standing up here to ruin my parents' beautiful anniversary," I stated clearly. My voice was perfectly level. I had practiced that specific level tone for weeks. Not angry, just crystal clear. It was the exact compassionate but firm voice I use when I have to tell a grieving family that their loved one is on a ventilator and we urgently need to discuss the final steps. I am standing up here because exactly 16 months ago, my older sister opened 5 secret credit cards and 3 massive personal loans using my personal name. She did it without my knowledge and without my permission. The staggering total is $94,000. A collective sharp gasp sucked the remaining air out of the room. My perfect credit score went from a proud 810 down to a ruined 512. 3 agonizing months ago, I was completely denied a loan for a tiny home because of a mountain of dirty debt I didn't even know existed. The suffocating silence was so absolute I could literally hear the melting ice shifting inside someone's water glass 3 tables away. Grace shot to her feet, her purple dress swishing violently. "She is lying," she shrieked, pointing a shaking finger at me. "Ivy, you sit down right this second." I didn't flinch. I didn't back away. "Mom, you absolutely do not need to take my word for it," I said smoothly. I reached into my dark jacket pocket and pulled out my glowing phone. "You can take yours." Aunt Rose had secretly connected my cell phone to the restaurant's main Bluetooth speaker system 3 hours earlier while she was busily arranging white gardenias on the giant cake table. She had carefully tested it with a hidden music track just to make sure the volume was absolutely perfect. Nobody ever questions the sweet florist adjusting the audio equipment. I firmly pressed play on the glowing screen. My mother's harsh, recorded voice suddenly filled Sterling's restaurant. It bounced off every single corner, hovering over every silent table. "She borrowed your name. Loyal families do that." A horrified gasp exploded from Aunt Penelope's direction. "If she did, it is because she was completely desperate. You don't know what it is truly like to struggle." Martha Sterling slowly set her crystal glass down on the table without taking a single sip. Her eyes were wide with total disbelief. Then came the final, devastating part. Grace's voice, dropping low, precise, and entirely unmistakable. "If you dare bring this up at the party, I will personally make sure everyone in this town knows exactly what kind of ungrateful daughter you really are." I calmly tapped the screen and stopped the recording. The crowded room did not physically move. Pastor Thomas slowly removed his reading glasses and placed them gently on the tablecloth, burying his face in his hands. Grace's mouth opened, closed tightly, and then opened again like a suffocating fish. That is completely taken out of context," she stammered wildly. "The context is $94,000 of stolen debt chained to my innocent name," I replied, my voice dropping like a heavy stone. "Mom, tell me exactly what context makes that okay." Delilah desperately stepped forward, her shaking hands raised high. She was forcing a smile, the terrified way people smile when the entire building is blazing on fire and they are desperately pretending it is just a fun summer barbecue. "This is completely ridiculous," Delilah cried out, her voice pitching high. "I can explain all of this." I quickly turned to face her. "Then please, Delilah, explain this." I reached down and held up the bright printed copies of the forged banking loan applications, holding them directly side by side with my actual tiny signature from my official nursing license. "This is your exact handwriting, Delilah, on a federal loan application carrying my private social security number." Delilah's fake damage control smile completely collapsed. It didn't fade slowly. It shattered all at once, exactly like a fragile window hit by a heavy rock. She didn't try to deny the obvious handwriting. She physically couldn't. Instead, her voice cracked upward into something raw, ugly, and pathetic. "You just don't understand what I was personally going through," she wailed. 56 stunned people heard it perfectly. It was not a denial, it was a full, legally binding confession poorly dressed up as a cheap excuse. I set the cold microphone down on the table. I picked up the 5 white envelopes. I didn't angrily toss them into the shocked crowd. I didn't wave them wildly in the air like a crazy person. I calmly walked them over to 5 highly specific people, handing them out one at a time. I moved the exact same way I deliver painful medicine to my hospital patients. Precise, highly intentional, and requiring absolutely no extra drama. The very first envelope went straight to Pastor Thomas. He had proudly baptized both Delilah and me when we were little girls. He had sat blindly in the front row of Grace's fake moral authority for 2 entire decades. I gently placed the sealed paper directly in front of him. "This envelope contains a strict factual summary and the official FTC identity theft report reference number," I whispered to him. "I thought you deeply deserved to have the whole truth." He looked up at me over his folded hands. He didn't open it yet. He just nodded once, his eyes full of deep sorrow. The second envelope went to Aunt Penelope, the exact woman who had cruelly texted me that maybe I needed to see a mental therapist. I set it quietly beside her cooling coffee cup. "Mom told you I was making crazy things up for attention," I said softly. "These are the 4 forged signatures that completely prove I wasn't." Penelope's trembling hand flew up to cover her mouth. Her eyes instantly filled with hot, shameful tears. The third envelope went to Martha Sterling, the powerful chair of the women's ministry, the wealthy employer of half the terrified catering staff currently standing in the room. The one woman whose spoken opinion could instantly move an entire town. This is a legally binding copy of my ruined credit report showing 8 massive accounts I never ever opened. I told her clearly, I am absolutely not asking you to do anything with it. I am simply asking you to know the real truth. Martha firmly held my gaze. She did not look away. She slowly placed her hand over the white envelope in silent solidarity. The 4th envelope went to Uncle Jack. Dad's older brother was sitting 3 chairs down from Edward. He had bravely served in the strict army for years. He absolutely did not tolerate cowardly liars. This is a word-for-word printed transcript of the audio recording you all just heard. All of it, I said. Jack immediately ripped open the paper seal and started furiously reading the terrible words. The 5th and final envelope went directly to Aunt Rose. She was proudly standing by the bright flower table, her hands calmly clasped together, as steady and bright as a coastal lighthouse in a terrible storm. She already knew every single painful word printed inside, but I deeply wanted her to proudly hold it in her own 2 hands right in front of this entire judgmental room. You were completely right, Aunt Rose, I said, my voice finally cracking just a fraction. For 12 long years you were the only one who was right. Rose gently pressed the white envelope tight to her chest and looked fiercely across the room at Grace. She didn't speak a single word. She absolutely didn't need to. Her victory was total. And then, I slowly turned toward a small table near the very back of the dark room. I reached deep into my leather bag and pulled out one final, slightly smaller envelope. I walked straight over and handed it directly to my young cousin Chloe. She took it from my hands, her tiny frame trembling violently. I looked back at Delilah, who had suddenly turned the absolute, sickening color of gray ash. Chloe bravely stood up. Her wooden chair scraped loudly against the quiet floor. She did it to me too. Chloe's young voice cracked, but she bravely held the damning paper up high for the entire shocked room to witness. $5,000. Aunt Grace entirely knew about it, and she viciously threatened to ruin my college life and tell my parents lies if I ever told the police. The room didn't just gasp this time. It completely, irreparably shattered. The perfect family picture has officially burned to ashes. I turned back to face the center of the chaotic room. I have officially filed an FTC identity theft report, I announced loudly over the murmurs. My credit is entirely frozen. Every single fraudulent account is actively being legally disputed right now. I am absolutely not asking anyone in this room to pick family sides tonight. I am only asking you to finally know the ugly truth. Grace's furious voice came hissing through completely clenched teeth. She violently lunged slightly toward the microphone stand, her face twisted in rage. But Uncle Jack instantly stood up, his massive frame completely blocking her destructive path. You will deeply regret doing this to us, Mom screamed at me. No, Mom, I replied softly, shaking my head. The only thing I will ever regret is signing that fake apartment lease to help you. Delilah frantically stepped forward again, her shaking palms facing outward. The desperate damage control smile was furiously trying to load back onto her pale face. She perfectly knew this specific role. The highly reasonable one, the sweet peacemaker, the gentle voice that always smoothed over the ugly family messes. Everyone please, just listen, Delilah pleaded. This is a private family matter. Ivy is just very upset right now, and I totally understand that. Yes, okay, I made a stupid mistake. I had a really rough financial year, and I foolishly leaned on my younger sister way more than I ever should have. But this belongs between us. It absolutely does not belong here. It was a terrifyingly good performance. Measured, soft, almost totally believable. You could visibly see the uncomfortable room desperately wanting to believe her sweet lies. You could see it in the way tense shoulders slightly loosened, the way a few confused heads slowly started to nod. They wanted the comfortable lie back. Then Uncle Jack spoke up. His booming voice commanded the space. He had been silently reading the printed transcript. He looked up from the white paper the exact way a tired man looks up from a massive bill he absolutely didn't expect to pay. Slow, deeply deliberate, highly dangerous. Delilah, Uncle Jack rumbled. One of these fake loan applications clearly lists your current employer as Tucker Realty. He held the typed page at arm's length, his thick reading glasses sitting low on his nose. You have been happily telling everyone in this town that you are still crushing it in real estate, haven't you? The entire room violently pivoted. Every single head snapped toward Delilah, her mouth opened wide. Absolutely nothing came out for 4 agonizing, endless seconds. I am currently between positions right now. she stammered weakly. Jack didn't argue. He calmly pulled out his own smartphone. He typed quickly with one thick thumb. Unhurried. Highly methodical. The entire breathless room watched him scroll. 12 seconds passed. 18. The official State Real Estate Commission public website clearly says your professional license was entirely suspended 3 long years ago. Jack read aloud, his voice echoing like thunder. It says disciplinary action. It is total public record. He calmly set the glowing phone face up on the dining table. Anyone sitting in this room can look it up right now. The low murmur that instantly swept through the crowded room wasn't just shock anymore. It was massive. Total recalibration. Every single arrogant boast Delilah had ever made. Every fancy Sunday brunch. Every shiny holiday. Every casual lying mention of a massive real estate closing was total, absolute fiction. For 3 entire years, I hadn't said a single word to expose her. I completely realized I didn't need to. Jack's simple, factual question accomplished exactly what no screaming accusation from me ever could. It came directly from inside the family. It came from the older brother Edward deeply respected the most, and it carried the heavy, undeniable weight of a serious man who had never ever been called dramatic. Grace slowly turned her horrified face toward Delilah. Her skin had gone the sickly color of raw, wet flour. Is that true? Delilah stared at the floor and said absolutely nothing. And then Dad finally spoke for the very first time all evening. His broken voice cracked hard on the very first word. It is completely true, Grace. I already knew. Ivy tearfully told me the truth 3 years ago. He paused, a single tear slipping down his weathered cheek. And you strictly told me to keep my mouth quiet. The giant glittering banner hanging proudly above their heads, Happy 45th Anniversary, caught the bright overhead restaurant light. The shiny gold letters were brightly gleaming over a ruined table where absolutely nobody was celebrating anything anymore. I reached out and placed the microphone back onto its metal stand very gently. I set it down the exact way you respectfully set down a fragile object that no longer belongs to you. I love my parents, I said to the silent room, and I truly meant it. Which is exactly the part that makes all of this pain so much worse than simple anger. I loved growing up in this quiet town, but loving your family absolutely does not mean letting someone blindly steal your entire future, and then being told to smile nicely for the camera about it. I securely picked up my heavy leather bag. I have officially done exactly what I needed to do to survive. The slow legal process will strictly continue regardless of whatever happens in this room tonight. I truly wish everyone here a safe, good evening. I turned on my heel and steadily walked toward the heavy front door. I absolutely did not look back at the crowded tables. I did not look at weeping Delilah. I did not scan the giant room for the shocked reactions I already knew were there. Aunt Penelope sitting with both hands covering her mouth. Martha Sterling sitting perfectly, rigidly still with her jaw set like stone. The gossiping church ladies frantically exchanging wide-eyed glances that would absolutely become explosive phone calls by tomorrow morning. When I slowly passed Dad's chair, he desperately reached out and caught my cold hand. Just for a brief second. His rough grip was incredibly weak, but it was there. His tired eyes were violently red and wet. His mouth was silently working, like he desperately wanted to say something real that hadn't been pre-written for him by his wife. He didn't find the brave words. I didn't wait for them, but I gently squeezed his rough hand back once. Then, I let him go forever. The heavy front door of Sterling's restaurant closed softly behind me with a final, satisfying click. The dark parking lot was incredibly quiet and wonderfully cool. It was mid-December, breathing the kind of sharp, icy air that beautifully stings your lungs and violently wakes you up from a long nightmare. I stood alone next to my old car and just breathed. In deeply through the nose, out slowly through the mouth. Exactly the way I patiently teach devastated families to breathe when the medical news is terribly bad and their legs suddenly stop working. Aunt Rose quietly appeared directly beside me in the dark. Her warm winter coat was neatly folded over her arm. She had left her beautiful flower arrangements behind on the tables. You actually did it, she whispered. I don't feel victorious at all, I admitted, a single hot tear finally escaping down my freezing cheek. That is exactly how you know you did the absolute right thing, sweetheart. Rose said softly, pulling me into a warm, genuine hug. Through the glowing restaurant window, I could clearly see the broken room I had permanently left behind. Grace was sitting entirely alone at the massive head table. Delilah's chair was completely empty. Uncle Jack and Pastor Thomas were standing closely together near the wooden bar, having a very serious conversation. Aunt Penelope was openly crying, and the shiny gold banner still hung crookedly on the back wall. Happy 45th anniversary. Absolutely nobody was looking at it anymore. The very first domino officially fell within 72 hours. Pastor Thomas personally called Grace on a crisp Tuesday morning. He didn't call to pray with her. He didn't call to offer sweet comfort. He formally called to inform her that the strict church leadership had held an emergency meeting right after Sunday service. They had agreed unanimously that it would be best if she immediately stepped down from the Women's Ministry Organizing Committee. He politely used the word encouraged. Grace accurately heard removed. Both words were entirely accurate. By early Wednesday, my cell phone started violently buzzing with emotional messages I absolutely hadn't expected. Ivy, I owe you a massive, deep apology. It was a tearful voice memo from Aunt Penelope. Your mother looked me in the eye and told me you were making crazy things up. I foolishly believed her without ever asking you first. That was so wrong of me, and I am so incredibly sorry. Her voice cracked painfully on the word sorry. Mrs. Harrison, the sweet 78-year-old neighbor who had been Mom's closest best friend since before I was even born, apparently called Grace that very same evening. I heard all the juicy details from Rose. Mrs. Harrison firmly said, I have known you for 35 years, Grace Tucker. I never ever thought you would let this horrible thing happen to your own flesh and blood. Grace angrily hung up the phone on her. Mrs. Harrison promptly told the pastor's wife. By Thursday morning, 5 more important people completely knew the ugly truth. Delilah completely went dark. Her fake shiny Facebook page, the one constantly full of stolen open houses and toxic inspirational quotes about showing up, hadn't been updated a single time since the explosive night of the party. Nobody in our massive extended family responded to her desperate texts anymore. Uncle Jack permanently blocked her phone number. On my quiet end of things, the tedious legal process moved forward exactly the way legal processes always do. Slowly on boring paper, but with absolutely no extra drama. 3 of the 8 massive fraudulent accounts were officially, legally removed from my damaged credit report within the very first week. The firm dispute letters for the remaining 5 were under strict federal review. Kelly happily called it way ahead of schedule. I calmly went back to work. I clocked in on time every night. I didn't tell my exhausted co-workers a single thing about the explosion. Mason quietly asked me once, right at the bitter end of a terrible shift, "How are you holding up?" "I am standing," I replied. He nodded respectfully. That was more than enough for him. Then, on a quiet Saturday evening, Dad suddenly called my phone. He didn't apologize. Not exactly. What he softly said was, "I really should have said something a long time ago, Ivy. Not just about this specific thing. About everything." I listened quietly. I didn't validate him. After a long, heavy pause, I simply said, "Okay, Dad," and I gently hung up. It was the absolute longest, most honest conversation we had shared in 3 entire years. Which truly tells you everything you will ever need to know about the silent man who raised me. Delilah nervously waited exactly 14 days. I honestly think she was desperately hoping the massive scandal would just blow over. She hoped the gullible town would quickly forget, that Mom would magically fix it, that the entire world would comfortably rearrange itself exactly the way it always had around her. It didn't. She furiously called me on a dark Friday night. No sweet pleasantries, no fake honey dripping in her voice. The beautiful mask was completely ripped off, and the ugly monster underneath sounded exactly like a violent stranger. "You actually think you won, Ivy?" she spat venomously. "This isn't about winning. I will personally call every single angry creditor. I will legally tell them you absolutely authorized those joint accounts. It will be your pathetic word against my word, and you fully know I am way more convincing than you are." I calmly let her finish her frantic screaming. Then I spoke to her the exact same way I speak to terrified patients' families when they are loudly threatening to sue the hospital because they are deeply scared and absolutely don't know what else to do. Calm, strictly factual, without a single tremor in my chest. "Go right ahead, Delilah," I replied smoothly. "But you should really know that I have an official FTC identity theft report on file, perfectly dated and federally time-stamped. I have a legally notarized affidavit, strictly signed under heavy penalty of perjury. I have 4 clear copies of your blatantly forged signatures that absolutely any basic handwriting examiner will instantly confirm are not mine. And I have a crystal clear audio recording of Mom openly admitting she completely knew you stole it." Absolute, dead silence on the line, and just one more tiny thing, I added coldly. Your real estate license suspension is total public knowledge now. Uncle Jack made absolutely sure of that. If you dare call a creditor and falsely tell them I authorized those loans, and you still list Tucker Realty as my fake employer, a professional company you were legally barred from, you won't just be poorly defending yourself against simple forgery. You will be actively adding massive federal fraud to it. The phone line went completely dead. I immediately called Kelly. She just threatened to dispute my legal claims with the angry creditors. Let her try, Kelly laughed dryly. I could hear her happily flipping through my thick file pages. The heavy documentation absolutely does not support her lies. And if she actually files a false written statement with a federally regulated lender, that is a massive separate criminal offense. She would literally be handing you another federal charge on a shiny silver platter. Delilah never ever called those angry creditors. She never filed a fake counterstatement. She never called my phone ever again. That panicked threat was her absolute last, desperate move, and it was the exact beautiful moment I completely knew, not just believed but knew in my bones, that this nightmare was finally over. Not because she ever felt an ounce of genuine remorse, but simply because she had entirely run out of gullible people willing to lie for her. Let me step slightly outside this heavy story for just a moment, because I have gotten a lot of private messages from people asking me this one specific question. Do you ever feel deeply guilty? And honestly, sometimes at 3 a.m., between grueling shifts, staring up at the blank ceiling, I do wonder if I should have handled it slightly differently. I wonder if there was some magical, peaceful version of this where I quietly got my credit back, kept my happy family, and nobody had to sit in a fancy restaurant watching their own mother's toxic voice come crawling out of a speaker. But then my memory clears, and I remember that I did try to handle it differently. I humbly went to my mother's quiet kitchen table. I practically begged her to help make it right privately, and she looked me dead in the eye and coldly told me she would bury me in the dirt. I think the absolute hardest part of surviving all this wasn't losing the money. It wasn't the ruined credit score. It was the devastating realization that in my twisted family, the person who tells the honest truth is always the massive problem, not the person who violently steals. I want to ask you listeners something highly specific. When Delilah called me and violently threatened to tell the banks I had authorized everything, would that scary phone call have terrified you into backing down, or would it have completely confirmed that you did the exact right thing by fighting back? Tell me down in the comments. I am genuinely curious where you all land on this. Also, I absolutely know a lot of you out there know a Grace, someone who would always rather protect the fake family image than actually protect a bleeding family member. If that is your painful reality, just type "I know a Grace" in the comments below. I think you will be incredibly surprised just how many of us brave survivors there actually are. Alright, let me finally tell you exactly what happened next, because the slow legal process was just one thing. But what my broken father unexpectedly did exactly 3 weeks later, I truly didn't see it coming, not from him. Exactly 4 weeks after the disastrous party, I came dragging home from a brutal hospital double shift. I opened my apartment door and almost stepped directly on it. A plain, unmarked white envelope had been smoothly slid right under my locked door. There was no postage stamp, no return address, just my first name scribbled in handwriting I had known my entire life. My father's handwriting, all capital letters, slightly crooked and shaky, the exact way an exhausted man writes when he has spent 45 long years gripping heavy steel pipe wrenches instead of delicate pens. I slowly sank to the cold kitchen floor, still in my dirty scrubs, and carefully opened it. Inside was a thin personal check written out for exactly $4,800. It was made out directly to me. Wrapped around it was a short note written on a piece of cheap yellow legal pad paper, folded tightly twice. Ivy, the shaky note read, "I know this absolutely won't fix your ruined credit, but it is everything I currently have. I have been quietly doing hard side jobs ever since I retired. Fixing leaky faucets, replacing heavy water heaters in the cold. Your mother absolutely does not know about this secret bank account. This is all of it. Every penny. I am so incredibly sorry I wasn't braver for you. Dad." I sat alone on the floor and read those painful words 3 entire times. Then I finally did something I hadn't let myself do since the awful day I sat freezing in Clark's bank cubicle and saw the cursed number 512 on the screen. I cried. It wasn't the polite, quiet kind of crying. It was the messy, violent kind where your entire physical body participates, where your tight ribs violently ache, Your hands absolutely won't stop shaking, and you honestly cannot tell if you are deeply grieving a massive loss or finally, beautifully healing from it. Maybe it was both. $4,800 stacked up against $94,000. It was absolutely nothing mathematically, and yet it was entirely everything, because it was literally all he had left in the world, and he freely gave it to me without ever being asked. I left that white envelope sitting on the kitchen table for 4 long days. I would walk slowly past it in the dark morning. I would walk past it late at night. On the bright 5th day, I picked up my phone and called him. "Dad," I whispered softly. "I am absolutely not cashing this check." I heard a long, trembling breath on the other end of the line. "I understand, Ivy, but," I added gently, "I am definitely keeping the handwritten note." A heavy silence stretched between us. Then he spoke very quietly. "Your mother and I are officially going to marriage counseling. Pastor Thomas personally arranged it. I didn't ask any nosy questions. I didn't push him for dramatic details. That wasn't my heavy burden to carry anymore." "That's good, Dad," I said sincerely. And I gently hung up. I took a piece of clear tape and stuck his yellow note directly onto my cold refrigerator door. I placed it right next to the faded photo of the beautiful little house I couldn't buy yet. The two absolute most honest pieces of paper in my entire life, living side by side. It has been exactly 8 months now. My recovering credit score is currently sitting at a steady 645. It is absolutely not an 810 anymore. But every single hard-fought point on that new number is entirely mine. Earned totally clean. Disputed totally clean. Carefully rebuilt from the smoking wreckage with endless paperwork and fierce patience. 7 of the 8 massive fraudulent accounts have been permanently legally removed from my history. The stubborn 8th one is currently in its final legal dispute stage. Kelly confidently says it will be totally resolved within the next 90 days. Delilah is currently being aggressively sued by 2 major creditors for massive unpaid balances under her actual real name. These are the heavy debts she couldn't cowardly hide behind my clean name anymore. Furthermore, her previously hidden suspended real estate license is now total common knowledge in absolutely every professional circle within a 150-mile radius. Mom cannot magically fix that disaster with a fake phone call. Grace officially resigned from the prestigious women's ministry. She still goes faithfully to Sunday church, but she sits completely silent in the very back row now. Mrs. Harrison absolutely doesn't save a prime seat for her anymore. Dad and I cautiously talk on the phone about every 3 weeks. Very short calls, highly careful words. We are absolutely not fully rebuilt yet. We are currently under heavy construction, and I have finally realized that I am completely okay with moving slow. Aunt Rose and I have a wonderful dinner together every single Friday night. She is currently trying to teach me how to arrange beautiful flowers. I am absolutely terrible at it. She just laughs and says that is exactly the point of learning. I successfully transferred Mom's fake apartment lease strictly into her own name. Kelly graciously helped me navigate the complicated legal process. 45 days formal notice delivered to the landlord. A brand new application filed solely under Grace's information. My forced cosign was permanently removed. It is completely done. There is no longer a single tiny financial thread connecting me to my toxic parents or my thieving sister. Not a single lease, not a plastic card, not a forged signature. I boldly told my mother 3 highly specific things in a calm voicemail that she has never ever acknowledged. I will never lend my good name to anyone. I will never lend my hard credit to anyone. And I will absolutely never lend my silence to anyone. Not anymore. I haven't bought a tiny house quite yet. My healing credit score desperately needs another 14 to 20 solid months to fully recover, but the beautiful plan is fiercely alive again. Different bank numbers. The exact same dogwood tree dream. On my quiet refrigerator, there are still just 2 things. A freshly printed photo of a new house listing I proudly saved to remind me exactly where I am going, and a shaky handwritten note from my broken father to permanently remind me exactly what it costs when good people decide to stay silent. I strongly refuse to be silent ever again. Both papers stay right where they are. I didn't share this painful story today to preach or teach anyone a harsh lesson. I am just a tired nurse, absolutely not a preacher. I boldly told it because for 16 agonizing months I stayed totally silent, and that toxic silence almost cost me my entire life. It almost took my credit, my future home, and my fragile sense of what was actually real. If my heavy story sounds uncomfortably familiar to you right now, if you are quietly sitting exactly where I used to sit, heavily holding a toxic secret that someone else violently forced you to carry. I just want you to know one absolutely vital thing. Fiercely protecting yourself is never a betrayal. It absolutely never was. Reaching this point of peace took everything I had, but standing in the light of the truth was worth every single battle. If this story, with all its raw edges and hard-won lessons, truly reached you today, I invite you to join this community. Your support, a simple like on this video and hitting that subscribe button, means we can continue to bring these powerful, real-life journeys to light together. Let's keep choosing truth over silence. Stay connected, stay brave, and I'll see you in the next story.